That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you picked that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
That's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, again dying from the heat, because it's hot. I need a weapon, and welcome back to the Halo Expanded Universe. So today, I have for you the first book in a trilogy of novels written by Karen Traviss, dubbed the Kilo 5 trilogy. Now, Karen Traviss is a weighted term, especially if you were an Expanded Universe fan of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, because she wrote the Republic Commando novels. She also wrote the novelization to the 2008 Clone Wars movie, and she wrote a tie-in to that show called No Prisoners. She also was a co-author to Aaron Olston and Troy Denning, a name you should be familiar with if you're a Halo fan, and that was a series called Legacy of the Force, which took place 5 years after the events of Dark Nest, and before that, 15 years after the events of New Jedi Order. So, Karen Traviss, often when she writes tie-in media, she's a very divisive person. You either love her works or you despise them, and there's little to no in between with that. We're not talking about Star Wars today, we're talking about Halo, but regardless of that, there's still controversy among this book, and we'll get into that, or this trilogy, I should say. But I want to get some of the little bit of historical context that I have here involving this. So, after Halo Reach, the rights of Halo went from Bungie, as they went to go work on Destiny, was given over to 343 Industries. And 343 got started on Halo 4, and they commissioned two trilogies to be written to kind of help flesh out the Halo universe. So the first trilogy, which I've already reviewed, because chronologically it's first, as it's in the ancient past, is the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear. Again, if you are a cross-fan person like me, and you've also read the Star Wars Expanded Universe, you know that he wrote the novel Rogue Planet, which focused on Anakin and Obi-Wan after the events of Episode 1, as they go to a planet called Zamna Sakat, which plays a pivotal role in New Jedi Order some 25 years later, with Luke and his New Jedi Order. But I was not a big fan of that one. However, I love the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear. Probably the better of the trilogies, but they commissioned that because it not only gave more fleshing out of the ancient past and of the Forerunners, but also gave good backstory and fleshing out of the character known as the Didact, which you would meet as the main antagonist of Halo 4. On the flip side of that, it's been 5 years in universe since the events of Halo 3. So what happened in that 5-year gap? Well, they commissioned Karen Traviss to write a trilogy called the Kilo 5 trilogy, which focused on events in the modern-day plot leading up to Halo 4. So, unlike Republic Commando, which you kind of can just entirely skip and be fine if you're going through the expanded universe of Star Wars, you kind of need these. These are kind of essential to understanding the state of affairs in the world concurrently before the events of Halo 4. And so with that, Halo Glasslands is the first book. And it is, amazingly, a sequel, kind of, to Ghost of Onyx by Eric Nyland. Now, Eric Nyland wrote that book, and it took place during the games, but, focused on completely separate people. And by the end of it, Catherine Halsey, some Spartan 3s, some Spartan 2s, Master Chief's original crew, and Chief Mendez are locked in this shield world, which would be, further fleshed out by Greg Bear, and the Halo 4 game, which being, that's what was like the whole Didax plan. Instead of using Halos, would be these shield worlds. So that's where, but that was established in the Bungie era, And so that's where they were left off. And, you know, that novel was written, like, sometime after 3. And we still had Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach. And in that time, we had no answers as to what happened to those characters. But we have Karen Traviss here to provide it. So we continue with their story. We also get introduced to a ONI team, Office of Naval Intelligence, with Saren Osman, who is a former test subject for the Spartan 2 program. She did not succeed, so she did not become a Spartan, but, you know, she has a lot of trauma from that, and through her and a character named Parangoski, we get a lot of Karen Traviss's sentiments expressed through them, which we'll dive into more in spoilers. But I like the team. We also have Phillips, who's like this historian, and he wants to study the culture of the Sangheili, which is really cool. Also, we have this plot with this character named Joel Mondama, who is a Sangheili, who, because the Arbiter at this point in time is trying to garner peace with the humans, and Lord Admiral Hood, the bald guy from 3, is going to talk to the Arbiter to kind of like make amends and like just have some sort of peace accord. And Joel Mondama doesn't want that. Sure, the Great Journey might have been a lie. The Sansha'yu might have been wrong, but I lost my train of thought. But he doesn't agree with the Arbiter in this whole piece. He still wants to kill the humans. He sees any peace as temporary, and that there's a lot of bad blood on both sides. You know, they haven't forgiven the humans, and they know the humans haven't forgiven them. And then back to Oni, they are trying to supply the dissident Sangheili with weapons because more of a civil unrest behind the scenes. Very, like, Black Ops sort of situation going on. So, all that to say, very interesting plot, and I do think it's worth your time. The issue is there is a lot of controversy here, specifically in regards to Halsey. As Karen Traviss is kind of notorious for this. She did this in Republic Commando with the Jedi, though and that one is a little bit less justified just because Jedi are meant to be the moral, you know, whereas there was always a little bit of grayness with the government in Halo. But here it is really, instead of just the government itself, because they sanctioned it, it kind of very much puts a lot of the blame on Halsey, which fair enough. And I'm mostly in agreement with the sentiment. However, there are times, I think specifically there's a moment with an ODST where he gets so angry over the situation, he considers, you know, just offing her. He doesn't, but he considers it. And I felt like at that point it was a little too heavy-handed. And that's the thing that Karen Traviss likes to do. She gets very moral and very... she's going to get up on her soapbox and tell you why this is wrong, which... Again, the reason I'm more tolerant of it here than Star Wars is because Eric Nyland, for as great as he is, essentially made the entire grayness of this issue just swept under the rug, as ultimately, well, it's for the greater good, it's for the greater good, it's for the greater good, and there's not a lot of nuance within that. So, I do appreciate this book. I understand why people have frustrations with it. I think it has some pacing issues. It kind of drags in the middle. But overall, I think it's a good read, and gives you a lot of context what the world is looking like after Halo 3. What happens after Halo 3? Sure, the Spartan program was kept a secret, and the Spartans helping win the war, but now the war's been won. So what do you do with them after the fact? And when information gets out, what does that do? The American government, or whatever you want to call it, they don't want peace with aliens. You know how many humans they killed? Just because they shake hands with one admiral doesn't mean that all that bad blood is just gone. So you have all these things there to make an actually really interesting, compelling story. My main gripes is that for a good half of the book, the team from Ghost of Onyx is just kind of stuck on Onyx. And of course, that was kind of the whole point. That was cliffhanger. They were stuck on Onyx. But for half the book, they're kind of just walking, talking about their feelings while stuck on this structure. Which, again, fair enough. If there's any time to do it, it's when you're stuck somewhere and can't leave. So, it makes sense, but it does drag at times. In the same way, you have the Oni team that's going to the same location that they're at, but on that way there's a lot of talking and not a lot of anything actually happening. But there's good character moments, so I don't mind it. I do feel the Halsey stuff is heavy-handed at times, like a bit, where like I get the point. Oh, let's bleh, over and over and over again, and it gets to the point where even I, who am in agreement with the sentiment, am like, this is a little much. And that's kind of just something, like, if you know Karen Traviss, you know how she writes, this isn't going to change how you feel about her. If you have an opinion already, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But I haven't read the entire trilogy yet. But regardless, this is a book that's important to understand the state of the world after Halo 3. So I do recommend it. Non-spoiler-wise. We're getting into spoilers now. If you don't want that, well, get the frick out of here. So this is 1 year after Halo 3. Halsey has a lot of regret over what she's done. We start off with that. She's very nuanced in here, even though it's very much Traviss moralizing and making her out to be this demon. But there is still a lot of nuance with her character, which I appreciated. We get introduced to Saren Osman. As I said, Oni wants to supply Splinter Group Covenant faction with weapons. The Splinter Covenant faction, we'll call them the Rogue Covenant. That's the ones we're going to see in Halo 4, essentially. So that you still have Covenant to shoot. And it still looks recognizably Halo. So another interesting point that Jewel Mandama makes is that they know that the Earth's faiths, and they know about Christianity, and use that as proof for Halo. So, like, Jesus died and then rose again. And that was proof that the faith was true and accurate. And so, Jewel Mandama uses this argument that, sure, the Halos were meant for destruction. They were meant to kill all life in the galaxy. We understand that's a revelation we've learned. But they're saying, well, the prophets, they were lying about it bringing us to heaven. But just because it's a weapon doesn't mean it's still not holy and still not true. So, maybe it is God's will that we should perish, wherever. Just because it's a weapon doesn't automatically negate it being divine. And there is a sense of logic in there, but at the same time, obviously a problem. ODSTs adjusting in wartime, or non-wartime, it's interesting, because the ODSTs and the Spartans, but the ODSTs are like the really cool soldier, as well as the normal soldier. They've been fighting this war for 30 years. Many of these people were born after this all happened. And all they knew in their life was war against the Covenant. Because this war went on for almost 30 years. So, what do you do once that's all over? It's stuff that book explores that is really good, actually. But yeah, so the main mission of the Oni team is to go and retrieve the Onyx team. Another interesting note is that the Sangheili are struggling after the war and their loss of faith, because they've been following the Covenant for so long that, like, what is society? What does their people look like and mean and live by? What do they do after the fact? Because the Covenant, they had a whole structure, these people did this, these people did this, the elites were just the warriors. But now they don't have that. They have to, have engineers, they have to have scientists, they have to have, doctors, they have to have all these things that they didn't really have before, because other races took care of that. So it's a thing that they have to adjust to. And again, it was really interesting to see that aspect of it. Tholvadam, the Arbiter, or Kadan, he has 3 different names now, he wants peace with humans. And Oni wants to cause secret havoc for the Sangheili, because they don't want peace. They want to exterminate the aliens. Mendez is interesting, and a lot of people get mad at this too. But in Ghost of Onyx, we don't get too much of Mendez's POV. He was the one that trained all the Spartans in the Fall of Reach, and then he went on to train the Spartan 3s. And Traviss makes it that he's been simmering under a lot of regret over a lot of time, and it's finally just bursting to surface in this story. And for me, that works fine. The idea that he's been thinking, because we didn't get in his head that much, so I don't mind the fact that he's been mulling over what he's done over the past decades and been like, you know what, I made a mistake, and if I had the chance to redo it, I would not do the same thing, you know? And so I don't mind that for his character, and I think it works really well. But he asks Fred how he feels about being robbed of a childhood. And Fred says, you know, honestly, it doesn't matter at this point. You know, I found family with John and other, you know, the other Spartans, and we help save people. Like, this is what we are. What, I'm paraphrasing, like, what use is there in worrying about it? Joel Mandama, Jewel, he gets captured by Oni. Lucy, who, from Ghost of Onyx, stops speaking after a traumatic event. Halsey's pissing her off and is about to do something. I forget the exact thing there. But she punches her in the arm and screams no. And that was a great moment because she hasn't talked. She's been signing throughout the entire last book that she was in. So to see her finally like speak again was awesome. And Mendez and Halsey have a fight. Mendez gets really personal and mentions Miranda and how, you know, she, you know, would be willing to kill random kids and experiment on them, but then, you know, cares about them a lot, you know, like, weirdly so, but yet left her daughter on her own. And so she gets really pissed off, rightfully so, because that's far too personal and rude and mean. But that's part of the thing, right? Like, everybody here is like really hostile to Halsey, and I feel like it's warranted for the most part. It makes sense for, like, most of these characters aren't, because the ones who remain consistently like not hostile to Halsey are the Spartan 2s. It makes sense. They have never been, like I said, it's pretty much everyone else, but at the same time, it makes sense. Philip, which character I haven't talked about much, he has a whole conversation with Jewel Mandama, and that was a really, really great scene. So they finally have the peace talks with Arbiter and Hood, and I realized that the final scene in Halo 3, where it's, were it so easy, that actually happens after this scene. One amazing scene in this book is when Halsey learns that Miranda died, because she didn't know that before. The Oni team meets up with them, saves them, whatever, and Parangoski lets, you know, her know, you know, and she's struggling with that because she spent her entire life on this project. She did not care about her kid, and the last time she talked to her kid, it was very negative, and now she'll never be able to reconcile that with her kid because her child died, and it just sucks. And then Halsey gets arrested. They mention the Infinity Starship, which will be important in Halo Infinite and Halo 4. Or not Halo 4, but... No, yeah, Halo 4 and Halo 5. We also have mentions of the Spartan 4 program. Now, if you've been reading in chronological order, we've already had them mentioned in Meridian Divide, in that stupid YA novel that's not good. And doesn't make sense for them to talk about that there. But yeah, so they're finally being, like, normal and being like, oh yeah, we're going to start doing Spartan 4s, which are volunteers and adults this time. Progress. Let's go. Took long enough. But that's essentially that. Like I said, the biggest issue here, for me anyway, bigger than the Halsey thing, is just the pacing of it. It really drags in the middle. And I think this is the thing with most of Travis's books, that go on longer than necessary. So that's my biggest actual critical problem with this book, is the pacing, because I think the prose are good. I think the main plot is actually pretty good, and I think the character moments are good. My only real grievance is the pacing of that, which I feel is rather slow, especially in the middle portion. And then, of course, like the Halsey stuff, which, again, I'm mostly in agreement with. However, it should be emphasized that it's not just Halsey, you know, and I know Parangoski says, like, yeah, this is completely on me too, but it always feels like all of it's being directed at Halsey. Halsey should be to blame, but the whole Spartan program is equally the government's fault. They gave the okay to all of it. But it is a thing if they very much push that Halsey is kind of this villain. But at the same time, I don't believe that even Traviss believes that Halsey's like inherently just completely evil and stuff, because she writes her so nuanced that she still, she regrets, she has, she admits that she's done wrong, which kind of just affirms what Traviss is trying to say. But regardless, she's not treating Halsey as just this heartless bastard when we get inside Halsey's head. So it's very much a nuanced, gray character still. And I understand why this would frustrate people, but they really like to hero worship this character. But, the Eric Nyland books never really truly dive into how wrong a lot of this stuff was. So I'm glad it's addressed here. And I'm sure it'll be harped more in the next 2 books, and we'll see how much that frustrates me. But as for this book alone, I understand why it might upset people, but ultimately, I'm for this story. I hope the next couple books have better pacing, but outside of that, I think it was a solid read and gave me a good picture as to what the universe looks like now that Master Chief is missing and now that the world's been saved. And I'm excited to read the next one, The Thursday War by Karen Traviss. But before that, I have a short story and a comic to read with you all. So until next time, guys, let's finish the fight. Thank you.